Hey everybody, what's going on? I'm DJ Sixsmith. You're watching The Sit Down. Brand new documentary you have to check out. Ali and Cavett, Tale of the Tapes. Robert Bader, Dick Cavett. Guys, what's up?
Hey,
nice to meet you. How's it going?
And if they forget who we are, they can always look at that.
We'll just look at you right here.
I don't have my glasses. Am I one of them?
You are one of those guys. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
What was it like for you to see yourself back in the day talking to your friend Muhammad Ali?
It wasn't like anything. It was unique. It was, I can't imagine anybody who could have the same effect on you as Ali did. His company, his being near you, as in corny-sounding legends, you felt some kind of, I don't know, vibration, some kind of something he emanated that was just, you knew you were in a touch of greatness. One of the most vivid examples of it I've ever seen. And he was great fun.
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of amazing footage. So going back into the archives, what was it like digging through, and what were some of your favorite moments to check out?
Yeah, the idea of these two guys being friends, apart from having him on the show, obviously there's such similar backgrounds, as you can tell. But the difference with Cavett and all the other shows he might have done was that there was a freedom and a warmth there that developed over the first few shows. And if you watch them chronologically, you see Ali grow to really love and trust him. Whereas the earlier shows, he's kind of angry. He's going through the thing where he's been banned from boxing. He's not going into the Army, etc. And Cavett's giving him a pretty good forum to speak his piece, whereas not every show did that. So I think it became a mutual respect, and I think Ali really trusted him.
You wrote poems for Ali on the Jerry Lee Lewis show.
Well, in one instance,
Jerry Lewis, I should say.
Notorious incident, the Jerry Lewis show didn't know what to do with him, and he said, well, he just recites poetry. So they built a classical, either Greek or Roman set, I forget what, and I wrote my first endeavor in poetry.
I think it turned out pretty good.
Yeah, I got a top name to do it.
So, Robert, when I think about this film, there's obviously the relationship between these two guys, but there's also so much going on culturally, historically. Why was it important for you to tell more about Ali, who he was as a man, Nation of Islam, kind of his growth over time?
Yeah, I was a kid when this was all going on. I didn't have a complete understanding of it. I just knew that there was that long stretch where he couldn't fight. And I wanted to know more about that, and it wasn't always easy to access that information when I was a teenager. It kind of got swept under the rug. Ali did an amazing thing. He was vilified by half of the population and loved by the other half, and he turned that around to make everybody love him. And I just didn't understand how that all happened. And looking back at the material from before Dick had a show, Dick got a show in 1968, and obviously Ali was very prominent prior to that. So I had to go back and put together some of the story without the Dick Cavett show interviews, of which there are many. But there were some things that needed to be explained, because when Ali first appears on the Dick Cavett show, he's in the midst of this firestorm. So I needed to go back and sort of set that up so it made a little more sense, because there wasn't a person in this country in 1969 and 70 who didn't know what Ali was going through. But if you just show the reaction to the question without explaining it, there's a young audience that has no idea.
Right. I think one of the interesting things is also you interviewed a ton of amazing people, but just the pure entertainment value that Ali brought to the table. When did you realize he had something a little bit different from a John Lennon or some of the other celebrities that came through?
It goes back to the word unique. I've never run across a personality that was as, well, I don't know if I would say never, but similar. No. He is absolutely himself. He doesn't remind you of anybody. He doesn't need to steal anybody's material. He's just a fabulous personality that comes smashing through the screen.
Yeah, it's really cool to see that. And the other thing, like, you weren't a boxing guy, and he became your guy for a long time. I wasn't
a major boxing figure, no. I was, I think I said on the show that, this is a show Ali was on, and Woody Allen was sitting there, and we were both worshiping Ali between us. And boxing, knowledge of boxing came up, and I said, my knowledge of heavyweight boxing dates from when I was a kid, the Lewis and Kahn fight, Joe Lewis, the Lewis and Kahn, and so it dates from then up to the marriage of Ernest Borgnine and Ethel Merman. Those are my heavyweight boxing and
I
fighting.
used that clip in the film because Woody Allen's laugh when Dick says that is priceless. It just had to be.
It's in the show, yeah.
It's actually a Joe Frazier show, I think, where you said that. But it's just really interesting to me that everybody I talked to about Ali for this film was puzzled why he had to stay in boxing so long when he could have just been a fabulous entertainer. He had such a flair for comedy. His timing was that like a professional comedian. And maybe he wouldn't have made the same kind of money, but he probably wouldn't have gotten battered around the last 7 or 8 years of his career because he was just fabulous in front of the camera and just could do anything.
I think that was one of the hardest things to watch because you see over time, just with the jaw situation that he goes through, he's getting heavier. He shouldn't have been out there, but he clearly kept going back. So what was it like for you to relive that, and what were you thinking at the time when he was still fighting all those years later?
Well, I most of the times he was on, I had no idea how sadly his life was going to end. And the emotion on a Caribbean island that I was on, when one of the guys who lived there, total black population almost entirely, and he said everybody on this island cried when he came out with the Olympic torch and the Parkinson's symptoms and so on. And that was our Ali that we had loved. Yeah.
You know, one of the things that was very moving for me, and Dick started doing this a little bit before the rest of the media did, he started encouraging Ali to retire. When Ali came on the show when you were on PBS in 1978, it was after Leon Spinks had beaten him. And Leon Spinks had been a fighter for about 10 minutes.
Right.
You know, it's one of his earliest fights, and he beats Ali, and he's the heavyweight champion. And Dick is actually starting to push him about why don't you retire? And, you know, he's making jokes about it. But there was a genuine feeling that Dick was worried about the guy. And I didn't really see a lot of that on other shows interviewing Ali at that point. They were all sort of retroactively telling him he should retire, you know, 5 or 6 fights later. Or, you know, well, in that case, maybe 3 or 4 fights later. By the time he's fighting Larry Holmes, everybody knows this guy should not be in the ring. In fact, his last fight, the Trevor Berbick fight, wouldn't get sanctioned by anyone in the U.S., so they had it in the Bahamas.
Yeah, it's crazy to think what
It's a
happened
shame.
there.
Yeah, it's sad to see somebody who's not the same person you knew for whatever reason. But this was one of the worst. I remember. I mean, don't you think you ought to quit? And he would make a joke, but it is a shame. His instincts for anything and to do with show business were perfect.
I mean, he was the ultimate entertainer.